Welcome everyone to Buddha's Center. My name is Jeff Allen, and today, once again, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. And specifically, we're learning how one at a beginner's level, and then even at an advanced level, would deal with the topics that are presented in the Lam Rim. So we learn how to do meditation on these topics right at the beginning, after the first topic of how students are led through the actual instructions in the base of the book. So it's exciting. We're going to go over how we actually apply these teachings and how we get better at understanding these teachings. And by doing so, we get closer to our goal, which is complete Buddhahood. Because by relying upon these teachings, we can get rid of the afflictive obstructions that keep us in cyclic existence, that keep us having to fear suffering over and over again. And through relying on these pathways, we can get rid of the obstructions to omniscience, those imprints of the afflictive obstructions that disallow us from being omniscient, from being at the level of complete happiness. So even the hearers and solitary realizers have who are abiding in nirvana have an incomplete happiness because they haven't practiced the full body of the teachings that are necessary to produce a complete happiness. So we're so fortunate to be presented with a pathway and teachings that will allow us to achieve a complete happiness. And as a result of that achievement, we can fulfill all sentient beings' needs, because that complete achievement of our happiness and that complete cessation of our suffering makes us Buddhas. And Buddha's sole goal is to free sentient beings from suffering. They have the love and compassion to be motivated to do so, and they are omniscient and have the power to carry out various tasks that ordinary beings and even Aryas and Arhats in the solitary and realizer and hearer vehicle can't do. So if we become a Buddha, we basically become the savior of the world. It's that goal that we'll be able to achieve by relying upon the teachings that we hear today and by relying on the stages of the path to enlightenment, which are presented by Lama Tsongkhapa to us and presented by Lord Atisha to us and ultimately presented by Buddha Shakyamuni to us in a fashion that will be complete and will allow us to achieve perfection. So let's set our motivation before we say anything else about the Dharma. Let's get into the 7-point Vairakana posture, which is a posture that will allow for us to have clarity of mind. We put our legs into the Vajra posture, if we can, or half lotus, or just crossed, or legs on the ground. Ultimately, we would want to put them into the Vajra posture, the full lotus position. But if we have a physical ailment that disallows that, of course, we wouldn't do that. We're trying to meditate with our minds. So we put our legs into that cross-legged position. We put our hands in our lap with our arms slightly bowed out, with our right on our left, with our thumbs in a diamond pattern, with our back very straight. We say the vertebrae should be straight like a stack of coins. Our shoulders in a comfortable position that allows for our hands to sit on the lap, and our right and our left and our thumb touching to be in a quite comfortable position. And then we have our head slightly tilted forward with our eyes slightly open, focused at the tip of our nose at a 45-degree angle, and then our mouth in a comfortable position with our tongue behind the teeth at the roof of our mouth. And this allows for circulation of the water in our mouth, and it allows us to get into the best possible position from a condition perspective to be able to sit for long periods of time. So the purpose of this position that we're getting into, this posture that we're getting into, is A, to have clarity of mind, and B, to be able to eventually sit for very long periods of time in a comfortable fashion. And then C, we're also aligning all of the channels and so forth that will allow for some of the other practice to come to fruition more rapidly when we're aligned. So we have those 7 points of the posture: our legs, our hands, our back, our shoulders, our head, our eyes, and our mouth with our tongue behind our teeth. And we begin to focus on the breath. We're trying to get our mind to a neutral state where we can grow virtue from, a place where we can set a proper motivation and we can gauge in the virtue that we get from hearing the Dharma and analyzing the Dharma and meditating on the Dharma. So we get to this place where we can be very, very, very clear. So we get into this position in the 7-point Vairakana posture, And let's begin to breathe in and out and focus on the breath to get our mind to that neutral state, free of distraction, free of attachment, free of anger, just in a very neutral state from which we can begin to mature our mind. So let's focus on the breath. Now, as we're focusing on the breath going in and out, we'll add a visualization. Imagine Buddha Shakyamuni in front of you, about 2 inches tall, about 2 feet in front of you at eye height. Radiant, glowing, a light body like a diamond, not a normal body full of intestines and blood and bones and so forth, a pure body, three-dimensional in front of you. So imagine as you're breathing in and out, you're focusing on that image in front of you. And anytime your mind starts to sway from the object of observation, bring it back. Start to think about your own suffering. Think about suffering as it was presented by Buddha in the First Noble Truth. The Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of suffering. We have to identify what that suffering is. Think about sufferings that you've had to experience that were so unbearable. And even the little sufferings that you wish you didn't have. Think about headaches, COVID-19, loved ones you lost, people who were sick, the fear you had about that. Think about the 8 types of suffering: the suffering of birth, the suffering of aging, suffering of sickness, the suffering of death. And think about how all of those things relate to you and will relate to you. Think about the suffering of being separated from the pleasant, meeting with the unpleasant. Suffering of not getting what you want. The suffering of being forced into this body, into this set of aggregates that serves as a basis for all of the suffering, serves as a basis for all of the afflictions and karmas to be carried out, serves as a basis for the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. Again and again and again, we take on these bodies that serve as basis for our suffering. Think about the 6 types of suffering. Think about the suffering of uncertainty, the understanding that the loved ones that we have may have been the enemies that we had before, that our wife or our husband or our child previously might have been our enemy, and maybe in the future. We wish we could be with these people all the time. We wish we could be surrounded by those ones we love so much, but we know there's no certainty that they won't be our greatest enemy in our next life, or a stranger to us, that we don't even care about. Think about the insatiability of cyclic existence. In the Condensed Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, it says we get everything that we want, and we're still not satisfied. That's the sickness. Over and over and over again, we chase after these things. We're seduced by things. They become bait for us. We think over and over and over again that contaminated happiness will make us happy, only to find out it turns into suffering later. We recognize that we have to take rebirth, and we will feel like this is me just as much as we do right now. And then we'll lose that. And then the fourth suffering of the sixth, we have to shuck off bodies over and over and over again. There isn't a mountain high enough that wouldn't be lower than all of the bodies we've had if they were piled up. And when we die, and when we've died, we've had to go from the high to the low. We've been in the highest realms of cyclic existence with jewels and everything we could ever want, all the material things we could ever imagine, thinking that we were in a permanent place, only to find out that it was impermanent. We realize we're going to die, and then we're thrust into the lower realms, into the most unbearable sufferings we could ever imagine. And then we're in the lower realms of cyclic existence, experiencing the most suffering we could ever imagine, and tormented. And then once again, we get a little bit better. And this circle happens over and over and over again because of our ignorance. And through this whole process, we're alone. We have no companions. This body won't be our companion into our next life. Our friends won't be our companions into our next life. And then we look at the three types of suffering that encompass all of these types of suffering just mentioned: suffering of suffering, the suffering of change, and the pervasive compounded suffering. The gross suffering, the pain that we experience in the suffering of suffering, the contaminated happiness that we chase after that becomes the suffering of change, and the pervasive compounded suffering that causes us to be born again and again and again into a set of contaminated aggregates because of our ignorance and our karma and afflictions. We analyze all these various types of suffering and think about them at a personal level. And we gain some conviction that, yes, the Buddha was right. We do experience these kinds of suffering. We've identified what he's talking about, and it's true. Now, the Buddha said, this is what causes all of it. The Buddha said, this is the superior truth of origin. And the origin had to be gotten rid of, abandoned. The Buddha stated that all of our sufferings, the 8 sufferings, the 6 sufferings, the 3 sufferings, all came about because of ignorance, an ignorance that saw the self as being truly established. And in dependence upon that, I think funny, then I have afflictions, contaminated karma, and then voila, there's cyclic existence. And the Buddha stated that this was certain, that these were the causes of everything that was wrong. And then the Buddha gave us the good news that all of these sufferings, all of these horrendous pains that we have to experience can stop, and stop forever. The Buddha said, if you stop what causes it, you stop it. So the Buddha then said, this is how you stop it. And the Buddha showed a path that was realized by superior beings, beings who had seen directly the nature of reality, in order for us to be free from suffering out of compassion. The Buddha showed us that. So now we have a little confidence and we say, we know we can get out of this suffering. We know we can get out of cyclic existence. If we get rid of the ignorance which drives it, we get rid of cyclic existence. That is its result. Then we start to think about our loved ones, think about all sentient beings, having to endure all of these various types of suffering as well. Think of those closest to us. Think of those we consider neutral or those people we're indifferent to. Think about those we label as enemy and recognize that that's not a solid label. We just realized in the first of the 6 types of suffering that there's no certainty. This person we label as enemy might be our child. We see the stories of Shariputra through his clairvoyance being able to see this very, very cinema of samsara when he gives the example of the man eating his mother and beating his child, and the child of him being his worst enemy previously, shows how there's no certainty in these positions. All sentient beings want to have happiness. Since beginningless time, every sentient being has been our mother, our brother, our sister, our father, has helped us when we were so vulnerable. And now maybe they're a little misguided and we're so quick to call them enemy. So we think about all these beings and how they're in the same situation that we are. And start to think how nice it would be if they had happiness. May they have happiness. I'll cause them to have happiness. And then we think how nice it would be if they were free from suffering. May they be free from suffering. I'll cause them to be free from suffering. I'll take it upon myself to make sure they're happy and to make sure they're free from suffering forever. And then we recognize that we're not capable of doing so. We're handicapped because we don't have infinite happiness to give, and we aren't free from suffering. We're in cyclic existence. We're stuck in the same pit that they are. And the only way we could really, really be of use to all beings would to become a Buddha. The Buddha stated that, yes, it's true that our suffering is caused by our ignorance, but our lack of infinite happiness is caused by our self-cherishing attitude. And that in dependence upon my grasping at I then become very attached to myself and think I'm the most important person in the world. And the Buddha stated that if we get rid of the subtle forms of that self-cherishing attitude, which is basically disregarding others, or being oblivious to others rather, that we could have infinite happiness. The Buddha stated that by combining that wisdom with the motivation to free all sentient beings from the state of suffering, with the motivation to bring all sentient beings to a state of bliss, we could become Buddhas by relying on a path. So it's for that reason that we're here today, in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, in order to truly, truly bring beings to a state of happiness that's free from suffering, and a complete state of happiness, not an incomplete state of happiness. We won't settle for anything less than all sentient beings being Buddhas. And that's why we're here today. So as we meditate, as we hear these prayers, as we hear this teaching, we should be doing so for the sake of all beings, to become a Buddha for everyone, leaving out none. So now imagine in the space in front of you, all the gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are there. All of the holy beings are there. Kensur Geshe Wandak is there. Geshe Lobsang Gompo is there. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is there. Lama Zopa Rinpoche is there. Demalocha Rinpoche is there. Geshe Dorji Damdu is there. Geshe Aga is there. Geshe Ma Tenzin Ladran La is there. All of these holy beings are in the space in front of you. And those are just a few examples of holy beings. Imagine them so pleased with what you're doing, so happy that you're engaging in virtue, so happy that you're doing something for once that will cause you to have infinite happiness and be free from suffering, because their goal is for you to have infinite happiness and be free from suffering. So they're so happy that you're doing that. So just imagine that they're all in the space in front of you, all the holy beings. And they're so proud of what we're doing. Now imagine that all around you are sentient beings, all the different varieties of sentient beings, hell, hungry, ghost, and animal, humans, demigods, and gods. Imagine all these sentient beings are around you and able to hear these teachings, think about these teachings the way that you are, and so forth, hear these prayers in their individual languages, and meditate on them in their minds in their own individual languages, the way that you are in your language. So imagine that all sentient beings are all around you in their various forms. Imagine that the happiness of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and all the holy beings increases even more because they see all sentient beings are around us and we're leading them. We're leading them in this prayer. We've led them to this teaching. We've taken them by the hands for once and cared so much for them, cared enough for them to bring them here because we know it's the only thing that can help them. And the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas know it's the only thing that can help them. So they're so pleased with us. And we should rejoice in the fact that we're doing this. We should rejoice in the fact that it's Sunday and we're here. We're not doing anything else but learning how to become a Buddha for everyone. Now, with that visualization in mind of all the holy beings, all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas in the space in front of us who are so pleased with us, and we're just rejoicing in everything that we're doing, and all the sentient beings all around us in all their various forms who are ready to listen, ready to hear the prayers, say the prayers in their own individual languages, and meditate on the teachings. And imagine that as we're doing the prayers, there's a rain of blessings coming from the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. We can imagine that syllables are coming in this rain down to us. We imagine that white rays and white nectars are coming down from all the gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to our crowns. And we imagine that they're in the form of an om and purifying our body. We imagine that red rays and nectars are coming down from all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas. And we can imagine that they're purifying our speech at our throat in the form of ah. So om, white, red, ah. And then we imagine blue, hum, coming in the form of light rays and nectars into our heart, purifying our mind. So white purifying our body, red purifying our speech, and blue purifying our mind. Om at our crown, ah at our throat, and hum at our heart. And we imagine that those three places with those three syllables white, red, and blue are being purified by all the nectar and the light rays coming from the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas in those different forms of colors that are dissolving into those places and purifying our body, speech, and mind. So with that in mind, we imagine all the gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and all the sentient beings around us and the special enlightened activities that the gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are engaging us by blessing us. Let's recite the Heart Sutra. Try to keep this visualization. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the five skandhas be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangati Bodhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Kala nyube ne jo damba ne nguje de ju nga yi do do jen ruba ba la ma yi bu jin zi ne zo ngandra za la sha ze lo ga za ma ra ja san ra za ma ra be. Aga samara janara samara yamedi ado ngade gade baragade barasangade badizo baba kanja sanji ga yede medoji se obadoji badoji shewadoji rage baji medoji danji se dengari zo gerin donja je je shewada medon be jendan de wada somba doji bozon zonjoji daji de janden da de le jo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. Now we make this mandala offering in Tibetan. Imagine all sentient beings are together with us making this offering, singing this offering. To all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, imagine the merit field in front of us. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Kam Niradayami. Sanye Jadan Ye Jadan La Janju Badu Da Nye Jasu Ji Da Gi Ji 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 Bezunan Ji Rula Ben Ji Zanye Druba Jo Zanye Jadan Zanye Jadan La Janju Badu Da Nye Jasu Ji Da gi ji 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 be zanan ji zhe ben jie zan ye zhe ba zhou zan ye zhe dan zi jie zhe na la zhan zhe ba de da ni jia zi ji da gi ji 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 be zanan ji zhe ben jie zan ye zhe ba zhou. The one who is transformed into the reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher, Sugata, and protector to you, I make prostrations. The one who has eliminated the web of conceptualizations and is endowed with the divine bodies of the vast and profound, who eternally shines forth the forever noble light rays, to you, the Buddha, I make prostrations. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind of full awakening for the benefit of sentient beings. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all sentient beings. Okay, so we have been going over the meditation section in the beginning of the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. So we've gone over kind of the preliminary practices. Lama Tsongkhapa shows exactly what we need to do if we want to sit down and do a meditation session. And then Lama Tsongkhapa also shows us actually exactly what to do when we get up from our cushion after what we would consider a meditation session. And you find out that it's all meditation. It's all when we look at what the word for meditation is in Tibetan, it's gom, and gom means familiarizing your mind, becoming familiar, saturating your mind, if you will, making the topic kind of one with your mind. In a lot of cases, that's what it's, imbuing your mind with love, imbuing your mind, saturating your mind with love, saturating your mind with compassion, or at least saturating it so much that beyond a shadow of a doubt the topics. So that's what we're really, really trying to do in our lives, is become more and more wise, less and less apt to create suffering in our future, and then more and more compassionate and loving so that we can have the most amount of happiness that's available to a being. And the most amount of happiness that's available, right, to a being is this immeasurable happiness that the Buddha has. And if we want that, then we engage in these practices in a very concrete way. And we do it all the time. But there are specific things we do when we go to sit down. So let's just real quickly, we learned about the 6 preparations. So first we clean the room that we're in, because why? We went over, if we're inviting all the gurus and Buddhas and bodhisattvas to come into our practice, because late in the next steps, we invite the merit field, then we better make sure that the house is tidy, that the room is tidy. We wouldn't, invite you think about if the president of the United States, Rinpoche always gave this example, was coming over, you would certainly make sure that things were proper. So likewise, because we're inviting all the holy beings, we clean the room out of respect and then assemble images of enlightenment. So that's the first step. And then it says to put out offerings that you've obtained in the right way. So you don't want to obtain them through deceit or in wrong ways. So you can learn all about the different ways to not get offerings to give when you go into more commentaries and so forth in the Lam Rim teachings. So you arrange them beautifully, it says. So, your first step, you clean the room and set up images of enlightenment. Second step, you then put offerings out you've obtained in the right way, and you put them out in a beautiful fashion. Then it says you get into the 7-point Vairakana posture. You get into a posture which will allow for some clarity of your mind. So that's why at the beginning, we say, let's get into this 7-point Vairakana posture. It helps with clarity of the mind. And then Asanga says that you're supposed to really check right now. How am I doing? Okay, I'm sitting here. How am I really doing? Am I distracted? Am I tired? Am I ready to do this? Really is what you're saying. You get there and you say, okay, is my mind ready to do this? Because Asanga says that if it's not, you might need to get and walk around, or you might need to do something in order to bring some clarity to your mind, or what have you. If it's tired, bring it back to clarity. If it's distracted, bring it back to a non-distracted place. So you check yourself right then and there. You get into this posture. So you're doing it so you can be clear, right? So the next thing you do is you visualize the merit field. And there's so many different merit field visualizations that I'm just going to give you a general idea of what such a merit field visualization would look like, but this in no way is me prescribing a merit field visualization. There's the refuge field you can visualize, there's lineages you can visualize, there's a lot of very specific things that you can visualize. But generally speaking, the central figure, you can have Buddha Shakyamuni, or you could consider Lama Tsongkhapa to be inseparable from Buddha Shakyamuni and your Lama to be inseparable. So let's just say it in the way that you imagine it just as Buddha Shakyamuni is a central figure. And then to Buddha Shakyamuni's right, your left, you have the extensive deeds lineage, right? You have the extensive deeds lineage that we talk about that goes from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya. So you have Maitreya there as a figure. And you have lights going to the central figure from all of these different lineages, showing that they all come from the central figure and so forth. So imagine the extensive deeds lineage with Maitreya and Asanga and Vasubandhu, etc., Dharmakirti, all these great masters, and imagine that lineage goes all the way to Serlimpa, then to Atisha, and then to the 3 Kadampa lineages through Drontompa, and then eventually to Lama Tsongkhapa. So however you're visualizing it. And then your right, the Buddha's left, you imagine the profound view lineage that goes from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri to Nagarjuna, the masters like Chandrakirti, Aryadeva, Buddha Palita, Shantideva, etc., all the way down to Serlimpa, and then to Lord Atisha, Drontompa, the 3 Kadampa lineages and so forth. And then to Lama Tsongkhapa. So, of course, Atisha combines all the 3 Kadampa lineages and the profound and extensive deeds lineage into one practice. And then you also in the center, and it's not really when you see the visualizations, it looks like it's on top of, on the top, but it's really behind. Everything's at the same level. So behind you have what's called the Lineage of Blessings, which is you have Vajradhara at the top, who's actually Shakyamuni in the tantric form, and then Tulopa, Naropa, and all the tantric teachers in the Blessings lineage. And you imagine that goes then to your to Lama Tsongkhapa or your guru's heart. So then you can imagine you have these 3 lineages, the Lineage of Blessings in the center, or right behind, all at the same level. the extensive deeds lineage to your left, and the profound view lineage to your right. And then you can imagine, also it says, if you have the central figure that's Buddha Shakyamuni, then right in front of Buddha Shakyamuni, you can imagine all your gurus. So you could imagine all your gurus right in front of Buddha Shakyamuni. If you have multiple gurus and you want to just keep Buddha Shakyamuni as the central figure, and imagine them in their various forms appropriately. If they're still alive, on thrones. If they are not alive, if they're not in this world with us, then you imagine them on moon discs and lotuses, which is fine and appropriate. So you can imagine them however detailed you wish. Just giving you an idea of what a merit field would look like. This isn't the exact merit field visualization I'm giving. I'm just giving you a general idea of who's there, who's in the merit field, what are the contents of this merit field. So then you imagine your gurus. You now imagine the three lineages. You have the central figure, and then now you can imagine the different classes of Tantra deities. You imagine the highest Yoga Tantra deities, the Yogic Tantra deities, performance Tantra deities, and then the action Tantra deities. And then it says you can imagine maybe the 35 Buddhas and so forth. You can imagine all of the 35 Buddhas. And then you can imagine the solitary realizers. And then you can imagine the hearers. And then you imagine all the Dharma protectors. And that's assuming when we say Dharma protectors, we're saying Arya, those superior beings, those Dharma protectors that are superiors, that have seen emptiness directly. We have all of those beings. So basically, we're encompassing all holy beings, and we're trying to make a visualization. The purpose of these merit field visualizations is be able to see the expanse of all of these holy beings who we rely upon, who are all part of this, who we can gain blessings from, who we can learn from, and so forth. So that's a general idea of the beings that would be in that merit field, that field where you could accumulate so much merit in relation to. It's a fertile field of what? A fertile field where you can grow so much merit from it. That's why it's called the merit field. So you have all these holy beings in front of you, your lamas and so forth, and whatever visualization you feel the most comfortable. But just trying to kind of get an idea, even if you're analyzing it, thinking about Maitreya. Oh, Maitreya, he passed down the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, to a Sangha. Oh yeah, and the equalizing, exchanging self with others. That was passed down from Shakyamuni to Manjushri. And they all ended up at Sirlimpa, and they all ended up at Atisha. You can start to use a little bit of analysis when you look at this merit field, and it'll reinforce your visualization. So that was the number 4. Now you make 7-limb prayer, which is number 5. So you make the 7-limb prayer of paying homage, making offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting the wheel of Dharma to be turned, entreating, and then a dedication. So you go through, we went over these limbs in detail before, so I won't go over them again in detail, but now you make the 7-limb prayer. And what's beautiful about the 7-limb prayer, when we look at virtue, we have 4.5 limbs that allow us to accumulate virtue. We have 1 limb that allows us to purify, and then we have 1.5 limbs that allow us to increase our virtues. So when we look at making prostrations, and making offerings, and half of the rejoicing limb and the requesting and the begging limb, those 4.5 make up for accumulation. The confession limb allows us to purify, and then half of the rejoicing limb and then the dedication limb allow for us to increase our merit and increase our virtues. So by doing this 7-limb prayer, in relation to this merit field, this fertile field to be able to produce lots of virtue from, we're able to accumulate virtue, purify non-virtue, and increase our virtue. So it's a very, very potent practice we see combined within that 7 limbs, and the object of observation of the 7 limbs that we're talking to, offering to, prostrating to, etc., begging, praying they turn the wheel of Dharma is the holiest object we could be doing that to. So that's why it's so powerful, and it's in every text that we find around practice. When we see it in the sutras, we see it in all the tantric ritual texts. You always make a 7-limb prayer offering. Now that's number 5. Number 6 is making a mandala offering and supplications. That's the sixth of the 6 preparations. Now, some of the texts and commentaries will say that the Mandala offering is made during the 7-limb prayer, because in the offering section, you see that a lot in the 7-limb prayer. But Lama Tsongkhapa points out that now you're about to make supplications. You're about to say, may through this virtue, et cetera, et cetera. So now you're making another Mandala offering. You're offering a perfect universe to those beings, again, in this 6th step, and then making supplications, saying, I'm offering this perfect universe through this. May I understand what I'm about to study. May I realize the stages of the path. May I get rid of the obstructions to omniscience. May I get rid of the afflictive obstructions. May I realize how to definitely want to emerge from the lower realms. May I realize how to want to definitely emerge from cyclic existence altogether. May I realize how to free sentient beings from suffering and experience a complete cessation of all of my sufferings and experience the most happiness possible. So we're making these kind of supplications. May I, through the power of this truth, etc., may I be able to realize these things. And now you've stamped, now you're ready to do whatever practice you've set out to do. So it says there's some important parts. Before you get ready, you should know what you're about to practice. Know what you're going to meditate on, and make sure you do all of that and don't do anything else. Don't do any extras. Don't add something in. Tell your mind what to do. Control your mind. Where normally our mind is just telling, just like a crazy person, going here, going there, and we don't really have any control of it. And it's just moving our body to go here. Oh, I want that. Let me grab that. Oh, I don't like that. Let me run away from that. But now we're stopping and we're saying, I'm going to tell you what to do, mind. And then by harnessing our mind more and more and more in this way, we are going to be able to develop those goals that we'll need to develop of calm abiding and so forth. We first have to try to, wrestle with our mind and get it under control and say, sit down, right? We're literally telling ourselves, okay, sit down, and this is what you're going to think about. You're not going to think about anything else, and you're not going to get up until you're done. It's so, I think we've all maybe heard this before, but this is literally like we've been trained maybe at the kitchen table, some of us, to do exactly this. Lama Tsongkhapa is telling us what we heard a million times, You're going to eat exactly what's on your plate. You're going to think about exactly what you're supposed to think about. You're not going to get up till you're done. You're not going to put too much on your plate, right? So that you have to be there too long and you can't eat it all. You're going to put exactly what you need on your plate. You're going to sit down and you're going to finish it. And you're not going to get up until you have. So you see how important setting the realistic expectation in the beginning of it is important. Because if you say, I'm going to meditate on, hours and hours worth of material, that's not really realistic, and it won't be something you'll be able to sustain. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, we should really, really make sure that we're doing short meditation sessions in the beginning. And they even say up to 16 sometimes, that's later advice, but you hear that advice given in the front of this. Lama Tsongkhapa says, practice it in the 4 times, early morning, before noon, late afternoon, and at nighttime, those 4 times where you would practice. But Geshe Sopa's commentary, and recently Geshe Dorje Damdu's commentary, and just so many, every commentary really says start with very, very short sessions. That way you won't be as distracted. Excitement won't be off the hook, and laxity won't, and lethargy won't be, there. If you meditate for too long, you're probably going to zone out. And that's, laxity, lethargy, that sort of thing. Or you're just going to be thinking about something else and your mind will be excited. And then you have sat there for so long, you might, think you've done something good and then go do it again. So you establish a very bad habit. If you, start meditating like that. You hear a lot of beginner meditators like, oh, I meditate an hour a day. I meditate 2 hours a day. And that's really wrong. That's a way to get bad habits in meditation. And there's no way. I mean, if I tell you right now to focus on Buddha Shakyamuni, the image of Buddha Shakyamuni only, and don't move your mind off it, it's exhausting after a minute or two. If you think about it, 21 rounds of breath takes about a minute and a half. Think about how hard it is to 21 times stop everything else, right? Nothing else, and just focus on your breath. In, out, one. That's like a minute and a half period of time, maybe two. It depends on how, right, like quickly you breathe. Everybody's a little bit different. But that's about how long it actually takes to do that number of breaths. But it's exhausting to our minds to be able to try and, I mean, we can do analytical meditation like it's going out of style. Think about this, think about that. But then when we want to put the brakes on and slow it down so that we can think about one thing, wow, that becomes so hard. So Lama Tsongkhapa says we should really keep our meditation sessions short, and we should make sure we know what we're going to meditate on, and then we tie that topic up tight in our mind. So we could be doing like a glancing meditation, right? So we don't want to only, know one thing about the Buddhist path. So when we're saying focus on a topic until you get it right, we're not saying you only know one thing and then you know another thing. You do a glancing meditation over the entire corpus, all the stages of the path. Teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity, teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity, teachings for beings of great capacity. You go through that in a glancing meditation, almost like looking at an outline. An outline isn't an analysis, it's just the broad outline. So you're looking at it in an outline, so you're becoming more and more familiar with where you're going, how you'll get there, and so forth. But you know that how you'll get there will require very stable realizations of each of the steps that get you there. So you have to go back after you've gone through all of the steps of the outline in a kind of general fashion to where you need to focus to be able to realize the next thing in a pure way. So only you know where that is. Only you know when you're doing a glancing meditation, those topics that are so clear to your mind that you don't even have to use a reason or anything to kind of have them tied up, like to know that it's true. Like we say, the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? Where I'm talking right now, I'm not thinking about A, B, C, D, E, F, G, because I know the alphabet well enough. It's ingrained in my mind. Maybe that's a good way to say it. When this stuff is ingrained in your mind, then if you know it is, and not just I'm bored with it, I'm tired of hearing it. Has this changed how my mind works? Just because you know the information, oh God, I got to hear this again, doesn't mean that it has saturated you and become part of who you are. You could have heard something a million times, be bored with it, but it didn't turn you into who you are now. So that's the point. You're trying to hear this again and again and again and analyze it again and again so it becomes who you are, right? So beyond a shadow of a doubt, the source of all my good is my teacher, and will always be that, will only be that. There isn't going to be a source, some external thing I can chase after in cyclic existence that is going to give me that amount of happiness. There's no other source of infinite happiness. There's no other source of complete freedom from suffering than that. So we need that ingrained in our psyche in that kind of way. So we tell our minds we're going to do this glancing meditation. An example. Everyone's independent, right? An example. We tell ourselves we're going to do this glancing meditation. Then we go back to that topic where we think we really are at. We look at the mirror of the Dharma. We see what the signs are if we've had realizations. We understand what it says in the texts about when people realize these topics, this is how you'll feel. We see if that's how we feel. We see if that's the response that we're having to it. If that's not the response we're having to it, then we need to look at more commentaries. We need to figure out where we've had an error in our investigation because the holy beings are having this kind of response to it. So we're making sure that when we're analyzing these topics that we've set out to do, that's all we're doing. Like you're not going to have any more than this. Now, if this could be related to the dessert at the dinner table, yeah, you may want to think about these other things right now, but you've got to finish your plate first, right? So it's kind of interesting when you try to use real life analogies to understand what any of this means. sometimes they can like sink into your mind in a different way. That's why all of the lamas use so many real life analogies to try to like, nail it to the inside of your being. So you're making sure you're not, looking at these other topics. You're making sure that you're tied into the topic that you're wanting to, and so forth. So you're making sure your mind's not excited, thinking about things other than the topic, and you make sure your mind's not dull, just kind of sleepy, and the topic's not very clear. You make sure that you have this clarity and stability, right? That's the key to the meditation, is that there's a clarity of it and it's stable. There's no wavering of it. So that's going to be the goal, that you'll tie that topic up with mindfulness, and you'll check and make sure through introspection that nothing is going wrong. Like there's a little spy of introspection in the corner of your mind. Like there's just this little spy just checking you out, making sure that you're on those topics, making sure you haven't forgotten the object. Mindfulness, make sure you don't forget the object. Introspection, make sure it's not, there's no excitement or laxity. You're checking the corner of your mind. You're just sitting there looking at your mind in a way, like a spy, making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, like your parents checking your plate. Make sure you're eating it off of the plate, right? So you're a spy in the mind, making sure that this is properly, this is a proper meditation. This isn't distraction in some way, that we're doing what we set out to do. So then the next part of it says that we have to conclude the session properly. So once we've gone through, and this is where we left off. So let me just get to the section in the book. Probably good to always have the book open. So here, I'm just going to read this one paragraph, how to sustain the meditation specifically. So there were a lot of general points I've made, but let's look at like relying on the teacher. What would we do? First, reflects on the benefits of relying on the teacher, such as quickly attaining Buddhahood, and the drawbacks of not relying on the teacher, such as giving rise to suffering in this and future lives. Then think many times and with an attitude of restraint, I will never allow myself to conceive of the faults in my teacher. After considering any of your guru's good qualities that such as ethical discipline, concentration, wisdom, and being learned, meditate on them until you produce a faith that has the aspect of mental clarity. Then, in accordance with the sutras cited earlier, contemplate how your guru's kindness has been and will be helpful to you. Meditate on that until you develop respect from the depths of your heart, right? So this is ingrained in you, the depths of your heart. When Lama Tsongkhapa says things like that, he doesn't mean it lightly. Like where the very, very core of your being needs to realize this. Once the depth of your heart, once the depth of your mind has realized that, then it's happened. And then it says what to do at the conclusion. And it says to do various dedication prayers, and then the prayer of noble conduct is mentioned here. The Samantabhadra, the prayer of Samantabhadra and aspiration in 70 verses is mentioned, but we find many beautiful dedication prayers that you can use. I see, prayer of Samantabhadra and aspiration in 70 verses. I apologize. So the prayer of Samantabhadra, the prayer of noble conduct, contains such beautiful dedication section. And it was one of Rinpoche's favorite prayers. It was something that we did regularly together. I miss those days so much. He would call us into the room and say, it's time to read the prayer of noble conduct. And it was, it takes 15 minutes or so to read in Tibetan out loud. And he would be doing all the mudras, and he was just so happy to see us. Like I say, all the gurus and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are just so pleased to see their students doing something good for once. And I would look over at Rinpoche as we were reciting this prayer, and I would see him just so glowing and just so happy, as I did so many times when I'd look over at him, and I knew I was trying so hard to be the best student possible. And I would look over at him and I just see him so pleased. We even have so many pictures of it, so it wasn't just in my mind. And that picture of him just so pleased that I've seen in my, in real life so many times. I just visualize in front of me. Anytime I'm doing something I'd know he'd want to, and it gives me more inspiration. It gives me the feeling that, gosh, this is all I should be doing. I only want to please this holy being. He was so kind to me. And the only way I could repay that would be to become a Buddha, because all he wanted was for sentient beings to not suffer and to be happy. And the only way I could help with that would be to become a Buddha, because that's all he wanted from me. And then I could help. I could help him carry out his goals. And when our meditation becomes real and it isn't some fantasy world, and it's something that we taste, that's when the Dharma is affecting us. When it's something that, when we think about our teacher, it causes us to have this kind of reaction. You know that something is working that would have never happened. When I picked up Kensur Geshe Wandak in my car with my earrings and my mohawk and my, oh, come on, I was going to show him some stuff. But now I think about him and it almost like takes my breath away, almost makes it hard to like breathe when I think of, having been able to meet such a holy being. So enough emotion, frothy emotion, but it really is how I feel. I think that you all know that. I don't think that that's something that you think is not the case. And then it talks about the 4 sessions that I mentioned. And then Geshe Sopa says that really those 4 sessions are for people who are dedicating specific time to doing practice. Like you're working, it's more difficult and you only can do the best you can. Do as many sessions as you can. You may be able to do 4 sessions before you even go to work, right? And then you get out of work, you crash, you're so tired. You have to do what you can do. A lot of these advices are geared toward monastics, geared towards renunciates. So a big section coming up we're going to get into is really geared at how you act in a temple, how you, as a monastic, should restrain your sensory faculties. We all need to do that too, but a lot of this is geared towards the monastics and renunciates and so forth. But that doesn't mean we can't learn from that. We should only want to have such a pure state of being, right? So if we could act more like that, be more pure, we're closer to Buddhahood, because we see in Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment that he makes it very clear that those holding the fully ordained vows are the most ideal candidate for a bodhisattva vow. And in order to go into a mandala, you need a bodhisattva vow. In order to become a Buddha as quickly as possible, you need a bodhisattva vow. So trying to act as we are ordained, right, is not a bad thing. And we do what we can as lay people, right? But the purer we can act in our daily life, the better the results will be in the future, and the more we'll connect with a lifestyle that's pure, or the conditions around us to have a pure lifestyle. So it's just something to think about. And it says that once your meditation session is sustainable, where there isn't this excitement and laxity, make it a little longer. So you're being this conscientious about your practice. You're making sure that, okay, today I did a lot better than yesterday. I can see I was able to hold the object. So now for 2 weeks, I've been really able to do this. Let's see if I can do this now for 5 minutes instead of a minute and a half, or 3 minutes instead of a minute and a half. We would be, as Westerners, I think, we'd be like, we got the minute and a half, going for the hour. But we really have to do this in steps. And this is where I see us all screw up so much. We aren't satisfied with the boring, like, introductory stuff. We think we should be so much more advanced because, like, some of us are super capable in a lot of areas. So we think we should be super capable and competent spiritually. But since beginningless time, we've been incapable and incompetent spiritually. So we're trying to undo beginningless lives, and now we've got this one, and we're like, hey, I'm really competent. But we have all these imprints of incompetence we're trying to undo, and as soon as conditions arise, our incompetence arises. Our incompetence in relation to love and compassion and equanimity, abandonment of anger, our incompetence when it comes to telling the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. It's from beginningless time. We're trying to undo something, and it's going to be like train going 100 miles an hour that's just the conductor puts stop on. And then we wonder why we're not further along. Why hasn't the train stopped yet? Well, it had so much inertia moving forward, it couldn't just stop. It's gonna take some real discomfort and sparks and just things that we're not anticipating, because we aren't clairvoyant. We don't know what karma, what condition in our life is going to give rise to some karma, and suddenly we're acting in a way we thought we would stop acting like. And that's why we have to keep guard on our minds at all times. Our minds are creating this reality. Our minds are telling our mouth what to do. Our minds are telling our body what to do. And if we don't keep a tight guard on this mind, then we're going to put ourselves into the same trouble we have over and over and over again. And it's a prison. We put ourselves in prison because we don't guard our minds. We don't believe we need to. We don't place importance on these things. We look at it as boring information, something I know about, not something that is me, not who I am, something I know about. And it's so important that we integrate these teachings into our daily life. And that's what Lama Tsongkhapa was able to do for us, to show us what to practice in a lifetime to be able to become a Buddha. Here's what Milarepa did. He became a Buddha in one lifetime and had a really a lot of non-virtue earlier on in his life. And Milarepa was able to engage in the stages of the path to enlightenment and have imprints just like we do of virtue from the past that all culminated in Buddhahood, came together, and he became a Buddha through relying on Marpa, relying on a teacher, the source of all of his good. Milarepa became a Buddha in one lifetime. So holy. And we can't make excuses. Our lineage comes from Drontompa, who's a layperson. Atisha felt the only person who was suitable to give his lineage to. The Lam Rim lineage too was Drontompa, a layperson, who then wasn't even willing to give all of the lineages to all the monastics, like the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice, the secret practices of how to get bodhicitta. Drontompa was very specific about who he gave those to, a layperson, specific about who they gave the teachings to. And then Milarepa, a layperson, who became Buddha in that lifetime. Marpa Lotsawa, a layperson, married. Make no excuses. If you want to make your lifestyle one of Dharma, you will. If you want to definitely emerge from cyclic existence, you will. But you will only get these realizations in dependence upon this text, in dependence upon all the holy Dharma, the sutras, the Kangjur, the Tanjur, all the Tibetan commentaries. The stages of the path that are pointed out in that is what's going to lead you there. So it's important that we know our stuff. I mean, when you look at the Lam Rim commentaries over and over and over again, it says that you've got to have studied to meditate. To have a bunch of things to analyze about a topic, you have to have studied. And you have your eyes at a 45-degree angle. You can't read a book like that. At some point in time, you need to put this into here, into your brain, into your mind, whatever you want to call it. Sooner or later, the text in your box, in your room, or on your bookshelf, they have to make it into your mind somehow. I remember being in Dharamsala too, and getting called out. You know, I was trying to debate somebody I wasn't capable of debating. It was in the streets in Dharamsala. This monk came up to kind of give me a hard time. I don't know why. It's just what happened. And, you know, I started, saying, well, Khenser Geshe Wandak told me that. And Khenser Geshe Wandak told me that, talking about the 5 paths. And I had no sourcing for any of it. It was just, he told me that. And the monk looked right at me and he said, well, what if your teacher's wrong? You don't have any sources to know if they're right. You haven't cut it and rub it. And it looks like all of your wisdom's in a box somewhere. And, I tried not to let that happen again. I've tried really hard to, you know, make it so that this is, I can sit down and do a meditation, you know, on the, you know, what are the 7-point cause and effect? What are the 9 stages of equalizing, exchanging self with others? You know, what are the 4 noble truths? What are the 3 ways the Buddha turned the 4 noble truths, right? We need these in our mind, because what happens if suddenly we're in a situation where we don't have our books, right? We get put into a situation, life can change like this. And all we have is what we have. We don't have a teacher. We don't have another book. How ready are we for that? Are we ready to become a Buddha without all these resources and charts and stuff? You know, are we ready to do that? And if we aren't, we need to saturate our minds. So this is what we're doing, right? So good news, we're learning how to do just that. And so now what to do in between meditation sessions. So more likely than not, if you're not a yogi, you will be in between this sitting session more than you will be in it. Okay, so chances are that's the case. So what are you doing when you stand up? Are you just then, you know, going to the bar? You know, are you going, you know, to gossip all night at a poker game? You know, or are you doing something else? You know, so basically your post-sitting meditation periods should be reinforcing your meditation periods, and your meditation period should be reinforcing your post-meditation periods. So the topic that you were analyzing and the things that you were glancing about, so now you get up from your meditation, what's your primary focus on your studies? Your primary focus on your studies is that subject you're trying to saturate your mind with. What's your secondary focus of your studies? All of the stages of the path. So you reinforce them and you don't forget them. It becomes so clear. So post-meditation period, whatever you're meditating on the actual session, you're trying not to forget. You have that little spy in your mind, seeing if you have. Oh my gosh, I think a bottle of wine is the source of all my happiness. Oh, you've forgotten. The source of all your happiness is your teacher. You know, so you rein that back in. Or if you see your mind starting to, you have this in your mind, you think you've realized it, now you're out and you're gossiping and you're starting to hear chat. You think the source of all your good is your teacher, but you're doing some gossip and you're starting to hear about some things that are enticing you. Now the introspection spy in your mind is saying, oh, mind, you're starting to lose what's supposed to be you. You're starting to lose who you are, who you want to be. Rein it back in, right? Because you're going to lose your object of meditation. So what are we doing when we're sitting on our cushion? We're making sure we're meditating on our object of meditation, and we're spying on our mind to make sure it's not busy or sleepy, or just not alert enough to be able to have gossip and other ideas slowly seep in, right? Other things that aren't the source of all of our good. So that spy is checking to see if that mindfulness is solid or not. And you're doing this all day. You're living your life like this. And this isn't just about the one topic, right? We don't only know this. We know the 10 non-virtues, you know, killing, lying, stealing, and adultery. You know, how am I acting in relation to those? I mean, those should be things in our minds that are just there, right? I don't kill, right? But am I abandoning killing actively? Am I doing that? You know, am I actively not stealing? No matter what, am I taking that to the most subtle level? So we're making sure that when we start to maybe, you know, take something, you know, for instance, if it was stealing, take something that of value of someone else's, right? When we start to take it, we see our mind saying, oh, wait a second, you know, or we start to think about taking it, right? Well, we know our mind is supposed to not steal. So the spy sees the hand moving and says, don't. Or the spy sees the hand take it and says, put it down. So the spy in our mind is constantly, the mindfulness is not forgetting the object, not forgetting what you're supposed to do, but the introspection is making sure it's not slipping away, right? So you're making sure you know what you're supposed to do. You didn't forget it, but it's not slipping away. And then you're also trying to accumulate means of gathering virtue. You're training in the various subjective aspects of meditation, accumulating collections, and then observing virtue, because there's a very strong connection between virtuous practices and leading an ethical life and our ability to sit and meditate and be able to gain clear understandings. And I think it's really like very simple. I think it's just like having a clear conscience, right? Like, I think that there's like an even more subtle form of that than we know. And I think our mind, once we tell our mind doing these things is bad and we do these bad things, there's a subtle guilt, a subtle level of something in there that's an obstacle that disallows our full potential. So this is all connected, if we want to really realize things, we have to have this foundation of ethics, a concentration that allows stability, and a wisdom that's like a bright light, right? We need all of these things as our supports. Okay, so we know what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be studying. We're supposed to be looking at the things that we don't know about, so we know about them. We're trying to add reasons and points to our that we can add into our meditation when we're sitting, like memorizing. Oh yeah, oh that's a benefit. Oh, that's the reason I'm doing this. This is the reason the guru is a Buddha. This is the reason I'm looking at it like that, right? We're adding more of these things as we're studying to be able to not have just in a book, have in our mind when we're doing our meditation. So our reading is supporting our meditation. We're familiarizing ourselves with our mind at this kind of gross level of reading, so that then the next level is we don't need it read because we've memorized it, right? Tibetan, in the tradition in the monastery, there's so much memorization. You actually memorize the text and then you're taught it. Very interesting. So you're not grappling with that part. The meaning is all you're grappling with. You've already got that part in there, and you can just add the reasons around the main outline. Geshe Aga just keeps saying, you've got to know that outline. You've got to know the outline of things. If you know the outline of things, then you can add all those details around it, and you won't be stuck on, where am I? You'll be like, okay, I'm right here, and this is what supports that. That's what supports that. That's what supports that, etc. Okay, so now you've gotten up from meditation, and what should you do? So I won't go through all of these points. You can read them. They're in this section, Lam Rim. But after we've concluded the session, we've made our dedications, we've gotten up, we're trying to do our best we can to focus our minds and meditate. What supports that? What would help us do that? So the first topic is called restraining the sensory faculties. So that's basically like guarding your sense faculties and restraining. Okay, so what am I looking at? Am I looking at things that I shouldn't be looking at, right? Am I being attached to something? Am I smelling something wonderful and now being obsessed with only smelling that, right? And then, oh, this is the best smell there ever was. Now you have improper mental conduct and so forth, or tastes or foods and so forth. So it's basically, it is like, just guard and make sure, be alert to make sure that you're not being taken over by your senses, right? So because that can allow your mind to go into attachment, to go into hatred. You see something you don't like, and you're like, I hate that person. That person's bad because of that. You're actually engaging in analytical meditation in the wrong way as a result of not guarding your senses, as a result of looking at pictures maybe you shouldn't, or looking at people maybe you shouldn't, or looking at going to a place you shouldn't be, right? Where there are things you shouldn't be doing, just all those different things. I think it's pretty clear, right? Like there's a lot of sayings that can support it. Choose one that supports your own. You wouldn't go somewhere that was the opposite of what you were trying to accomplish if you really were sincere. So you're first trying to guard them, and then you're actually looking down, instead of looking. If you have to restrain them, you're looking away. If you see a car, you really want that car, you see, oh my God, it's building up, look away. It's that simple. That's all Lama Tsongkhapa is saying. Like, guard, be on guard. Oh, my mind is starting to become attached to that, 57 Stratocaster I still want, right? My mind is becoming attached to it. Look away, right? Understand it's happening. Is that 57 Strat going to bring me to a place of enlightenment? It's going to make me pretty happy for a bit, maybe, although I can't really play guitar very well anymore. And it's more frustrating than happiness. But I still, in my mind, think that 57 Strat, the white one with the black pick guard, I could start like fantasizing about it, right? Now, do I go on my phone and start looking at pictures of it, right? I might be running low on a battery. I don't know how much juice that tells you. It says you might want to plug it in. I don't know. It's just a suggestion it's making. It doesn't say you have 5 minutes. So anyway, now do I go look at pictures of the 57 Strat, right? No, I know this thing's causing me some trouble. I shouldn't look at it, right? I shouldn't go over and play it. That's for sure, right? Unless I'm like a multimillionaire and whatever, I can get rid of at least that attachment by buying it, and then I can move on to my next one. That's a joke, but right? But that's kind of how our mind works. Not being a little funny, but that's how we operate. So you can apply it to everything. And if it's something that's causing way too much problems, you got to restrain it. If it's some sort of food or drug or alcohol or whatever. Whatever we do, whatever your thing is, I don't know. We all have our things. If you're seeing that when you're guarding your senses, that it's starting to cause a problem or you're going to move to non-virtue, you need to just somehow get it out of your life. It's basically what it means. Protecting your mind, the mind from being afflicted, and then setting it on something that is ethically neutral or virtuous, right? Not looking at that, moving it away. Go to the breath. I'm wicked attached to that. I can't get this out of my mind. Use the breath to get to a more neutral state. Now build virtue. Now get your mind from attachment to virtue. The three, in the Lojong, what are you changing? What's the change that's taking place? One of the things, the three poisons, you're changing attachment to non-attachment. You're changing hatred to non-hatred. You're changing ignorance to non-ignorance, you're abandoning those three things. So you're making the mind the opposite of that at all times and figuring out how you can become better and better and better. And then basically after that, it says now you need to act with vigilance, and a lot of this is, for monastics that are coming up, what to do in a temple and so forth. But wow, why wouldn't this be great for us to do too? So we'll look at it real quickly. Actions of your body, when what you're doing, how are you behaving when you go out to town, right? Like, how are you acting? Actions of the eyes, it says both slightly looking at various objects because you have seen them unintentionally, and fully viewing those objects you have intentionally looked at. So guarding your eyes, what are you looking at? Things that are coming attached to, are you staring at them? Did you unintentionally see something that now is causing attachment? Are you looking away, or now are you staring at it? That kind of thing. How your actions of your limbs, fingers, and toes. Just how you're interacting. How you deal with your religious robes and alms bowls, but also how you deal with your items. Do you need to go buy new clothes all the time, or can you just take care of the ones that you have and use them for a long period of time? It's funny, in 2001, when I decided I wasn't going to go forward and become a monk, I had the introductory vows, so I had robes on. And I gave back the robes to Rinpoche, which he said he knew was going to happen. And then and he actually told Barbara McAuliffe about how long it would take, and it was right around the amount of time. So that was great. After I did it, Barbara's like, "Oh yeah, Rinpoche told me that right around this time you were going to give the robes back." You'd have to check with her about the details of that, but she told me that. And I went and bought a shirt. Because I had given away all my clothes in a big fancy grand nature because I was going forward and I was never going to, I was going to be a monk. And so I went and bought, some shirts, and it was funny. I was rewatching like some of the teachings, and One of the shirts is from then, 2001, that I bought. So just like that, just be mindful. We don't need so much stuff, guys, right? Take care of what you have. For this, you're respecting holy items. So this is saying these are holy items, respect them. But in our case, right, isn't a set of clothes to a naked poor person a holy item? So we need to think about really reality all the time and just stop being so indulgent and thinking so much about ourselves and there's no one else but me. I'm so important and I just need to be so satisfied all the time. I've just never figured out how to do it. So anyway, and then it says related to alms, when people give you stuff, eating and drinking and so forth. And then actions in the temple, so how your body. Yeah, even Suma was in. I'm back. It's fine. It's just whatever we got. I want to be able to finish off the teaching.
Can they hear you? Make sure they can hear you.
Can folks hear me? I don't know how to find out if you can hear me. Everybody hear me? I think everybody's muted though.
Oh, they're muted. Yeah, let's just say.
And we're not.
Let's see. Okay, yeah, you're good to go. Go for it.
Can you just check and see if people can hear me?
I don't have another phone. That's where it is.
Oh, good. If
I'll try.
perhaps someone could just click on like their screen and say thumbs up, just so I.
We can hear you.
Thank you.
You're good.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I was on a roll too. But anyway, so basically we're trying to watch our body, speech, and mind at all times. We're trying to make sure that we're behaving appropriately based on the circumstances that we're in. What's the most appropriate way to behave based on, the environment that I'm in, using mindfulness and so forth. So I think at this point, yeah, so that pretty much, you can read some of the other points that are in here, but that pretty much goes over everything that I wanted to get done in that section. And then let's just finish up this appropriate diet. I'll go over it real quickly. I may go over it again next time. I just want to finish the chapter today, so that we've as a group completed some things. So appropriate diet is pretty obvious, but it's good for us to monitor how we're eating, what we're eating, and so forth, and that the food is giving us nutrition. It says that there's a really important connection between that and our meditation. If we eat too little, we won't have strength. If we eat too much, our breathing becomes difficult. If we're bloated, right? It's obvious. We've all experienced that. And if our breathing's difficult, then our meditation becomes labored. So we're trying to do everything in our life that we can and surrounding ourselves with everything that will make us better practitioners so that we can become Buddhists. So that's the point there. So, we eat wholesome food, digestible food, and food that doesn't produce the afflictions. If we have something that makes us so attached over and over again, we need to take a look at that and so forth. And then if we do have some sort of attachment to food, as many of us do, then Lama Tsongkhapa gives a whole bunch of different ways that we can look at
the downfalls of food, being attached to food, and so forth. And we look at the points of insatiability, and that people have to fight over food sometimes, and so forth. And we look at the fact that the food turns into a substance that looks like vomit a few minutes after we get it, and this thing we're so attached to, and will eventually turn into feces, and so forth. So we should be looking at food as a means to be able to give us nutrition and strength to be able to do the Dharma. Not eating too much, not eating too little. So that's the point there. And then sleep talks about sleeping at the right time, the middle part of the night, and trying to not sleep during the day, and trying to spend all of our time we can. Obviously, we have to work, we have to do things for this life. There's just no way around it. The time that we can to engage in practice, and only sleep supposed to sleep. And then it goes into sorry about that. A call came in. We're just batting 1,000 over here. And then we are using, when we go to sleep, there's some points that are made in the text about how we should go to sleep. And it says that if we can get into what's called, so when we lay down to go to sleep, this is the last thing I'll say. When we lay down to go to sleep, we should bring our meditation topic that we use on our cushion right to our minds. And we should guard it the same way we did while we were sitting. So we use this meditation topic pre-sleep, and we think about these things over and over and over again until we fall asleep. So it says by doing so, our entire night's sleep is virtuous. And we imagine that as we're doing this, that our mind is very clear. So sometimes it says, imagine your mind in the point of clear as very bright, and then imagine start meditating on and analyzing the meditation topics, doing whatever point of your practice you're doing. It says, as far as your posture, you should lay in the lion posture, where you're on your right side with your hands supporting your head, with your left leg on the right and your left hand on your left thigh, which is on top of your right leg. You can look up what the lion posture is. And it says by doing that, it keeps you in a place where you can eventually meditate through the entire night, and there won't be a break in your meditation. So we get into that. It's very hard to stay that way. You usually will end up in a different position or not even be able to fall asleep that way. But it's good for us to at least go to that position and see if we can sleep like that. And it says that we should have a lightness of our mind. It's like a wild animal just ready to spring up. And if we have that lightness of our mind and we say, okay, it's 6 a.m., we're going to get up. All the meditation masters say that after some familiarization with it a few times, not even that many, we'll just get up exactly the time that we're supposed to. So those are the points that are made. And I apologize that our power cut out, but things happen, and we can't always control them. So let's does anybody have any questions? I think I can take questions like this, but if not, we'll just do the concluding prayers. Okay, we'll read the 8 verses for training the mind by Geshe Langritamba. Very, very important mind training text. Such an important mind training text that Geshe Chikawa, who wrote the 7-point thought transformation that we hear so much about, was actually introduced to this text. And it's what made him have so much faith and wish to learn it, that he then sought out a guru. We'll get into that story another time. And then learned it very well, and then wrote the 7-point thought transformation. So this text is very influential and is considered quintessential, indispensable in the Kadampa tradition of Lord Atisha's mind training lineage. The 8 verses on training the mind by Geshe-la with the determination to accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings who surpass even a wish-granting joy, I will learn to hold them supremely dear. Whenever I associate with others, I will learn to think of myself as the lowest amongst all and respectfully hold others to be supreme from the depths of my heart. In all actions, I will learn to search into my mind, and as soon as disturbing emotion arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. I will learn to cherish ill-natured beings and those oppressed by strong misdeeds and sufferings if I have found a precious treasure difficult to find. When others out of jealousy treat me badly with abuse, slander, and so on, I will learn to take all loss and offer victory to them. When the one who I benefited with great hope unreasonably hurts me very badly, I will learn to view that person as an excellent spiritual guide. In short, I will learn to offer to everyone, without exception, all help and happiness directly and indirectly, and respectfully take upon myself all the harm and suffering of my mothers. I will learn to keep all these practices undefiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concerns, and by understanding all phenomena as like illusions, be released from the bondage of attachment. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Lozandrava to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled monolith to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land, surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray that in all our lives, may we never be separated from Khenso Geshe Wandak in whatever form he or she chooses to show us. Whether it's the emanation body in our world, or when we realize emptiness, it's the enjoyment body in the pure land. May we never be separated from him or her until we become Buddhas and can help him or her in their quest to free all sentient beings from suffering. Thank you so much, everybody. Definitely going to talk about getting together in person, maybe next week, next Sunday. I'll be in touch with everybody personally to let you know about it. But a lot of people have been mentioning that it would be nice. I think it would be nice, and to see people not on a screen, and then maybe we can do maybe some Tara practice together, because we haven't been able to connect with that in a bit. So I will be in touch. I need to look at the future weather, which is always the situation, but I think we'll probably all meet outside, either up here at Buddha's Center House place, or we'll be at a park nearby. So we'll see. Hopefully that will happen and there won't be any obstacles to making that happen. And we'll still do it somehow or another, hopefully on Zoom as well for those who can't make it. But it'd be nice to see everyone. And if that, like I said, in the next couple of days, I'll be in touch with everybody. So thank you, all of you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak the Holy Dharma, the lineage of Khenso Geshe Wandak. And I look forward to seeing all of you on Thursday night, where we're looking at that incredible teaching on equalizing and exchanging self with others, that I hope to be able to bring Geshe Chikawa's 7-point thought transformation into, and mind training like the rays of the sun by Nang Kapel, and all of the different texts that serve as aids to understanding the Lojong teachings. So we'll see you then. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it so much. Sorry we shut off. I hope it wasn't too distracting. Now
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, end meeting. Oh, I don't know. Do I? There we go.